The late summer sun was dipping below the horizon when the quiet cul-de-sac erupted into chaos. A hired security officer for the local HOA stood in the middle of the road, his trembling hands gripping a handgun aimed directly at a young, black woman in jeans and a gray tactical jacket. Neighbors peeked through blinds, some filming on their phones. The officer barked orders she didn't flinch at. What he didn't know, and what would change everything, was that the woman staring him down wasn't just someone's daughter. She was a highly decorated FBI tactical commander, and she'd just been pushed too far. Section 2. Setup. 230, 350 words. Kendra Owens had spent her career breaking barriers. From the grueling Quantico training grounds to classified counterterrorism operations overseas, she had faced enemies far more dangerous than the man now threatening her. But that evening, she wasn't on a mission. She was simply visiting her father's home in a quiet suburban neighborhood, one she had always found unwelcoming. Her father, Samuel Owens, had lived there for nearly 2 decades. He'd endured the subtle glares, the whispers, and the occasional HOA compliance notices that seemed to target him more than his white neighbors. But he never made a fuss. "Keep your head down, pay your dues, and they'll leave you alone," he'd told Kendra countless times. The HOA had recently contracted a small private security team, supposedly to prevent trespassing near the community lake. In reality, it had become a pretext to profile anyone who didn't look like they belonged. Kendra had heard about the incidents. Residents questioned while jogging, cars followed slowly through the neighborhood. But she never expected to be caught in one herself. That evening, she parked by the lake to stretch her legs after a long drive. It was peaceful, the cicadas humming, the golden light rippling over the water. But within minutes, a black SUV rolled up, and a man in a dark polo with HOA security stitched across the chest stepped out. He didn't ask who she was. He didn't ask if she lived there. He went straight to his holster. Section 3. Rising Action. 44650 words. Kendra's instincts took over. Years of tactical training meant she registered every detail: the shaky grip, the unsteady breathing, the way his index finger hovered dangerously close to the trigger. He was scared of her, scared of the story he'd invented in his head. "Step away from the vehicle," he barked, his voice cracking. She kept her posture neutral, her breathing even. This wasn't the time to announce her credentials. She knew that sometimes saying too much to a frightened man with a gun only made things worse. From the corner of her eye, she saw movement. Neighbors gathering at their doorways, some whispering. A woman in yoga pants stood in her driveway, phone angled toward them. The HOA security man's voice grew more aggressive. "This is a private community. You're trespassing. Hands where I can see them." She raised her hands slowly, palms forward. "My father lives here," she said evenly. But the words slid past him. His mind was already made up. Then she heard footsteps behind her. Her father's voice cut through the tension, shaky but loud. "What the hell is going on here?" Samuel rushed forward, but the officer's gun swung toward him. That was the moment Kendra's restraint cracked. In less than 2 seconds, she pivoted, closing the distance, her hands locking around his wrist with precision honed from hundreds of training drills. The gun tilted harmlessly toward the pavement. The man stumbled back, cursing, trying to wrench free. Kendra didn't hurt him, but she held him firmly, her voice low and deadly calm. "You need to put that weapon away. Now!" More neighbors had gathered. Someone shouted, "Call the cops!" The irony wasn't lost on Kendra. She was the cops, in a way. When the responding police arrived minutes later, the HOA guard was still sputtering accusations. "She attacked me! She's trespassing!" But as the officers took Kendra's ID, their demeanor shifted instantly. Her badge caught the fading sunlight, the words Federal Bureau of Investigation, Tactical Operations gleaming in gold. Section E. Et tu, climax, 320, 430 words. The HOA security officer's confidence evaporated. The police didn't cuff her. Instead, they stepped aside respectfully as she walked toward him. "You pulled a gun on a federal officer," she said, her voice carrying through the now silent street. "You pointed it at my father, and you did it without a shred of probable cause." He stammered something about suspicious activity, but Kendra cut him off. "The suspicious activity was me. Existing by the lake while black, wasn't it?" No one answered, but the silence was its own confession. Even the neighbors filming seemed uneasy now. The senior responding officer turned to the HOA guard. "Sir, we're going to need your weapon and your license. You're being detained for brandishing a firearm and unlawful threat." The man's face flushed red. He tried to protest, but his words faltered under the weight of the moment. The police led him toward their cruiser, his head bowed. Kendra turned to her father, who was still trembling, not from fear but from rage. "I'm okay, Dad," she said softly. But in her chest, a different fire burned. This wasn't an isolated incident. This was part of a pattern, a culture that allowed people with minimal training and unchecked biases to wield deadly weapons under the guise of security. Section 5. Resolution and Impact. 320, 420 words. In the days that followed, the HOA tried to downplay the incident, calling it a misunderstanding. But Kendra wasn't interested in their spin. She filed a formal complaint with the county, and her report, backed by police body cam footage, triggered an investigation into the HOA's hiring practices. It turned out the man had no formal security license and had previously been dismissed from another job for aggressive conduct. The HOA had hired him without even a basic background check. Local news picked up the story. Footage of Kendra disarming him played on loop, accompanied by headlines about racial profiling and unqualified armed guards. Some neighbors thanked her quietly, others avoided eye contact, but no one could deny what had happened. Her father's home was now safer, not because of the HOA, but because their careless approach to security had been exposed. The private security contract was terminated. New rules required licensed, trained professionals and mandatory anti-bias training. As Kendra stood again by the lake one evening, the sun setting in that same golden light, she thought about how close things had come to tragedy. A single moment of fear, fueled by prejudice, could have cost her life, or her father's. Racism doesn't always wear a hood or shout slurs. Sometimes it hides behind a badge that isn't real, behind the word security, behind the excuse of just doing my job. And sometimes the only way to break its grip is to face it head on. If I wasn't an FBI commander, she thought, this could have ended very differently. A question lingered for anyone watching her story unfold. How many others never get the chance to walk away?